So hello, I'm Manuel, and I'm talking about sticks. Sticks is something that may simplify your API. When I say that, I don't want to be misleading, so it cannot be like any API. Like for instance, if you have an API that makes beer, I cannot simplify that for you. So, but I'd like to meet you afterwards, if that's okay. So I'm talking about basically something that takes data out of a database and throws it into for some application to consume. My background is primarily application development. I've used Postgres probably for the first time in the mid-90s. It was very, very different then. And I've been in a position where, like I could sort of like bet the business on a couple of startups on PostgreSQL in the last few years. Great evolution, and it's reached like a level of maturity where I think there's like serious applications coming into it. Now, I'm coming at this from a more like an application development perspective rather than some of these hardcore Postgres talks, so bear with me on that. Now, to begin with, this is kind of like the way people explain application architecture to management. They say things like it's modular, it's scalable, it's standardized. When they go for drinks after work, they say it's elegant, it's like beautiful code, right? Reality that I've seen in a number of places is it's a lot more like this. The agile reality of, like maybe 2 million lines of Java code that 2 years ago got moved on to sort of like 2-week sprints, and the documentation in there looks like, like this check-in was made on St. Patrick's Day, 2014 or something like that. Obviously, I'm sure that this does not apply to your guys' companies or to the excellent organizations that are your clients, but there's a lot of that, I think, out there. And at this point in time, like you get into a situation where, and now, we need to make the database faster, because that's like the slowest thing. That's the only problem that we have with the system. So the database is slow. Oh yeah, and forgot to tell you that also maybe, like if you're storing money in this, it doesn't like balance exactly precisely. It's like, if there's a couple of dollars here or there at the end of each day, that's okay, but the main problem is it's not fast enough. And this is where you come in. So it's your job to make the database faster. And if this is the situation that you're in, I can help you. No, I'm going to talk about the problem. The problem many times is a lot of this is sort of like data manipulation code. Maybe it goes through a database connector like ODBC was the thing in the 90s, JDBC, there's a few of them. Maybe it goes through an OR mapper. Maybe it has read-write access to the database, so there's application code like in Ruby or something that reads and writes to the database through a connection. And at the end of the day, it uses embedded or generated SQL. Now, the challenge with that is it's very, very hard to track. So if you've been in the situation in which you're looking at what's going into the database or what makes it slow, and especially if you're dealing with things like generated SQL, it can be very problematic. Also, a significant portion of the code is almost like transformation, so data transformation code. So you have data in the database, and you transform it for consumers through an API. Usually it's to mainstream formats and a bunch of other formats that are maybe proprietary to the company or who knows. Usually it's like one module per format. Trouble with that is they sort of like evolve independently. So like let's say you support in your JSON API something, and the XML API, like it's very, very hard to keep them in sync. Sometimes they have different bugs, so it's one relatively common challenge. Also, it's likely that a lot of this application code was written by application developers, like full stack developers. So like their primary expertise being whatever Java or Ruby, PHP. And, oh, you need to get data out of the database, so you just have to write a select statement, basically, or an update. And maybe without major involvement by database engineering folks. So they come in sort of like later in the game, usually when there's a problem, the database is slow, or there's data integrity issues, or stuff like that. So for this, I think, wouldn't it be great if data manipulation code was inside database functions? Input to these functions. So imagine that you have database functions, and you could send HTTP requests to them, and they'll respond back to you with whatever you wanted: JSON, XML, ODS, CSV, Excel. Now, this is already supported by all the mainstream databases. They have functions, and provide like really nice sort of like encapsulation and separation through access permissions. There was an excellent talk, I think by Joe today, earlier, about functions. Functions are awesome. And they're a tool that's very, very mature inside Postgres and a bunch of other databases. Now, this is where actually sticks comes in. So you have a database function and encapsulate its result into pretty much any format that we can think of. Synopsis. So basically, your function, it can be more complicated than that. So if you have a database function written into your database, this one just does a select. What you do is you go to a web server that's configured for that. You type the function name, .json, because you want JSON result. And what it gives you back is list product names, the name of the function, and all of the records in that result. Oh, pretty awesome, pretty straightforward. And by the way, the first version of this about 5 years ago was only doing JSON, right? But then I thought, why not .xml, right? So do the same thing, the same format, just do .xml at the end, and it returns to you, an XML file. This is very useful. I mean, in my experience, a lot of times, you have like application server code that's using, JSON has a lot of really nice ways of dealing with JSON. But when people want to develop for like a mobile app or something like that, maybe XML, whatever. So it's nice to have both of these and both of them having them in sync. And you can even go further than that. So imagine that you put .csv, and what you get is like a CSV file with the data set that just came back. Imagine that you do .xlsx, which is the recent I think it's Excel 2012 or something like that. So it's an open format, right? So you get a full-blown Excel spreadsheet with your results just by appending a different extension to it. Now, the way this works is like there's two ways, right? So one of them is function name dot extension, and you can give it parameters if you want. And we realized very early in the game that there's a lot more complexity that we need to deal with rather than just sort of like one call, one function call. So we decided to do also something called endpoint. So JSON is an endpoint, and to which you add as HTTP parameters the functions that you want to call, right? So you append list products, and you're going to get exactly the same result. By the way, these two are implemented by exactly the same interface, so you don't need to worry about like the way that they're being called. Now, result types. Result types, and if you're coming at this from an application development perspective, there's a lot into how they're packaged, right, by different APIs, right? Now, the default for sticks is set, which is an array of records. So you get in sort of like JavaScript, you get list products, which is the function call, then an array, and in the array, records, which are name value pairs for each of the products. Now, this works really nicely if you have things like you're doing, I don't know, you're displaying, I don't know, pictures and functions and names of people on a web page, right? So people who work for the company or something like that. But if you've got like a table, let's say a table of orders that you want to display, you want maybe one first column with the names, and one first row with the names of the columns, and then records one in a row. Now, if you have, there's a lot of things that can be annoying when like you have an API that is going to give you only one record, right? And you call it, and you get a set, right? And then you need to look with the first element of the set, right? So, but there's nothing else beyond it. It also opens the possibility for bugs as well, right? Well, there's record. So basically, just give it in the call. So your endpoint, record, the name of the function, and it'll give you one record. And it'll complain if this set, the return result from the function, is more than a record. So it'll fail with an error. And also, again, very annoying many times, you have like one value, right? So get me the price of the best product or whatever it is, right? So what is today that the database would know? And you got like a set inside which is only one record with only one field. So just nice JSON packaging. Now parameters, and in the talk on functions was very, very cool that, like PostgreSQL added a few years ago named parameters. Now named parameters you can use directly on the URL. So if your function is created with one parameter last name and one parameter country, last name equals the name, country equals the country, it'll just work. Also, you can use anonymous or positional parameters. So in other words, don't specify the name, just specify the value. So find user, Crawford, USA. Now, you can take this even further, because there's functional reasons why you may want in an application to do more than one call at a time. And this is actually one common challenge where you're having round trips, right? Let's say your application is in the browser, is JavaScript, and you keep on calling for the API with like 5, 6, or if it's like WordPress, 120 calls, right? So for displaying like one page, right? So with almost nothing, like a lot of hidden fields too, right? Now, that is, the problem there is the fact that like the browser has limited capability on what to send back and forth. So what we do is encapsulate multiple calls into the same HTTP call. So record get product, value get best price, set list product names. You've chained them together, and the result comes back as one packet with 3 fields. And you can do as many as you like in theory, and get a lot more value that way. Errors. The very excellent thing about PostgreSQL is it's got an awesome exception capability. So you can, inside your code, you don't find a record, you can just raise an exception. Stix will trap it and will package it for you in the result. We'll tell you get product not found, which is exactly the error that comes back from the database, right? So you don't have to worry about an additional interaction layer that interprets these errors. Now another interesting aspect is access control. So basically, in theory, the surface of your API should be just a set of functions. So that's it. It's very, very easy in Postgres to simply restrict users. So grant execute on the function just to the PostgreSQL user, Stix, and then this function is visible to Stix. Grant visibility to nothing else to Stix, and the only thing that the API can see is a list of the functions that it can call. Very, very simple, and you may already have all of the work done at your end. Now, the way that this is arrived at, you have a user, sticks, that through configuration that I'm going to show, you assign what is the database user for the application. Make sense? Good.
Can separate requests be issued as separate users?
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, this is the example. If you want to separate JSON and XML requests as separate users, you can do that. Now, inside the configuration file, you have to create two PostgreSQL accounts, sticks_JSON, and grant execute rights to it only to certain functions, and so on and so forth.
I was thinking specifically of the client, which connect as one user versus another user. Different clients that different.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, the sky's the limit on what you can do. And what's nice about it is that it's already baked in, right? So in theory, it's already baked into PostgreSQL. So your question being, can you expose a different shape of the API to one client versus another? Answer is yes, very easily. There's more. For instance, this is get, what you saw. Supports post just as well. So basically, whether you send a request as a get or a post, you get exactly the same result. There's a couple of features that are baked into the version that I'm using, but that I haven't published yet, primarily because of like concerns about purity, like cookies, for instance. Would it be nice for sticks to be able to read the value of a cookie, for instance, and use it in the query rather than like have to pass it always as a parameter, right? So that just like it doesn't look like totally awesome the way that I've implemented it. $sign cookie, whatever, right? Chaining forward values is another request that I've received a few times. So wouldn't it be nice if, based on the result of one of your functions, you called part of that result as a parameter to another one of the functions, right? When you chain? Does that make sense? So that is also supported because like in sticks, you control the calling environment, right? So you have access to those values that have been returned, and you can pass it as a parameter to a future call. Now, installation should work on most Unixes. There's some pretty much mainstream prerequisites that you'll see here. So I've pretty much targeted Ubuntu and works out of the box on 16.04. I've tried last week on 16.10. No worries. The main, most unusual thing here is fastCGI. I mean, how many people have heard of fastCGI? Yeah, it's old school. It's like an old school kind of thing. But it's very robust. It's being used by a bunch of, like Nginx, for instance. Like used by a bunch of core components. Maybe you don't know that fastCGI is part of that, right? And by the way, on my roadmap, there's also removing fastCGI as a dependence, but quite frankly, I don't have enough traction to do that. Installation is from source, and I think you're thinking right now, oh yeah, another experimental sort of like piece of software, and the installation instructions are in the code and in the source and so on and so forth. I'll show you. I'm taking a great risk right now, so to show you and hope that it's working. So what I have here is a browser that's talking to my server here on a VM. And I have hello.json in case you cannot see, right? And what can happen if you do hello.json is it's not found because sticks is not installed. I download sticks, the latest version. I untar it. Configure, make install. And by the way, this is almost like a version 1604, right? And what's happening here is, oh yeah, I forgot to tell you, it's written in C++, and it's building one binary per format, even if they use a bunch of common functionality. And one of the advantages of having one binary per format is you can very easily restrict. I don't want CSV, for instance, right? So you remove it altogether as a binary. Now, the install. So you obviously have to enter parameters like connection parameters for sticks to connect to the database. I already have a database that I've configured here with a password. Now, it uses the typical command line string, and there's a link to where you can find the parameters in there. But there's like a ton of stuff that you can do with it if you want a lot more than username, password, database name for this. And if you want to, like different hosts, a bunch of other stuff. Good, and also it's because I'm from Canada, so we're polite. So like we tell you what we've done, so what we've installed, and so on and so forth. And if I go right now to hello.json, what I'm going to do is what I'm going to get is function hello does not exist, but it's already an answer from sticks, right? So sticks try to call a function called hello with no parameters. It does not exist. Awesome. However, if I call something like list users dot XML, is there. And packaged as XML, and I can do the JSON as well. So anything you want is there right out of the get-go. So try to make it as easy as possible to hit the ground running. Yep? But yeah, I have an answer for that. Good. Now, there's a few deployment scenarios that this has been used in, right? So, by the way, this is I've decided to open source part of a project that I did for my startup. So I had a ride-sharing startup in the wrong part of the world about 5 years ago, so that I folded, and decided to open source one component of it, and this is it. So this has seen some mileage. So it's seen some mileage in sort of like relatively critical applications, some of them dealing with money, and like not crashing over like a year or two kind of thing. So it's not sort of like this is not the alpha version. Now deployment scenarios are new applications. You have a new application that you're thinking of writing in sticks. Awesome, you're in luck, right? So just write the functions. You have the API. Great. An existing application, though, there's the simplest, the lowest hanging fruit is you want to add reports to your application, right? So I know that in my experience, sort of like reports in Excel, for instance, are one of the top things that sales guys are asking for, and one of the last things that developers want to deliver, just because of the fact that they have like a queue, a feature queue that's targeting the customer, right? So not internal, right? So this just you enable Excel and you've got it, or CSV. Now there's also, at least in my experience, it's very common for people to ask for a new API endpoint, right? So we had JSON up to this year, but now we have a customer that requires XML, and we should do that, right? And I've seen that working in a few scenarios in my career, and it was not pretty, right? So you got the XML, it's very, very hard to keep them in sync. You add a third format, it's even more complicated. So in here, you may need, because one of the challenges will be identity, right? So chances are that your existing API has a way of dealing with identity, right? And you either get a brand new identity layer that you somehow bake into this, or you figure out some form of key exchange, right? So there's like a key that's signed by the application that Postgres can verify that is legit. Now, another scenario is refactoring. And for this one, this is obviously the most complex. First thing that you would need for that is probably a new toothbrush. But also, integration with existing identity, like through federation, for instance. Or, if you're really lucky, and your company is ready to sort of replace their identity system with something else, you have a shot at this as well. By the way, for me, this is like one of the top requests that I'm receiving is, like, oh yeah, session management identity system. How does that work with sticks? And try to bake it in. So I've done it for in a few instances, but chances are that this will be something that will make it into the bundle if there's enough need in the new year. Availability, this is the website. There's no M, so it's not .com. It's sticks.co, okay? It's GPL. The prerequisites are good quality available, so in most Linux flavors. It's also C++ 11. So you will need, if to install it from source, you'll need C++ 11 compiler, but that's available on pretty much anything. And primarily, the reason for C++ 11 is not just like the latest, the coolest version of C++, which it is, but there's, it's easy to sort of like scale an application with if you have access to classes, encapsulation, that kind of stuff. Okay, what about paging? This is actually, these are keywords in PostgreSQL, and I believe they may even be SQL standard. Offset, fetch, right? So offset, where do you start with your query? Fetch, how many records do you want to fetch? You can pass those as parameters to your function, and that's it. Encryption, digital signatures cryptography. There's a bunch of stuff that's packed into PG Crypto. Actually, PG Crypto is pretty decent, and if you're not even happy with that, there's the ability to do like more. So there's more sophisticated crypto modules that you can bake in. And the main use case for this is how to sort of like validate users inside a database when you're in the middle of a function, right? So if you have an ability to do that with like a signed token or certificate, great. Session management, again, this is one of the things that's coming soon, and it depends on interest, quite frankly, but it's a very straightforward module that you can plug in, and chances are it'll do out of the box something like OAuth 2, and we'll have some patterns that you can use that are supporting, maybe identity systems that are relatively similar to that. Caching, no. But hey, I'm willing to hear opinions about that. I'm hearing this from folks. Aren't you moving business logic in the database? And apparently this is like a pretty hot and almost like religious issue because business logic should be in Ruby and should not be in SQL and whatever, right? So no comment, no comment on that. But basically, there's data that needs to come out of the database, and only certain people or certain users should be authorized to use it. And if you're able to encapsulate that and provide like a rational surface to this, everybody wins. And the trouble, in my opinion, is that you get, in most companies, you get, let's say in most startups, you get to the point in which you even have the ability to evaluate these issues very late. What's on the roadmap? Spreadsheet templates. And by the way, this is the new version that may be coming in the next 2 to 3 weeks. Supports ODS, which is sort of like the OpenOffice, LibreOffice kind of spreadsheet. It's very decent. It's kind of like well documented. And I'll show you the way that this will work. So imagine that I have like some application that gives me, hold on for a sec. So it gives me, let's say, position on the x-axis for when somebody's waving at a Raspberry Pi or something like that, right? So and you get like, This is what you get from your API, right? And what you would do with this is, yeah, I mean, this is good enough as it is, right? But wouldn't it be nice if there's like a, like a lot of stuff that you do for analytics afterwards, right? That usually people put in templates, right? So you have a template for this stuff if you're an analyst, and maybe you cut and paste the data that you get from a CSV into that template, and you get the beautiful graphics. So what I'm working on is the template name. So it's going to be server name, template name, harmonic, then function name, .ods. And what you're going to get, oops. So basically, sticks gets out of the database the first 2 columns. The rest of the columns are calculated, and there's like a beautiful chart that's attached to those columns, and you get it just like that. And by the way, you can ask the analyst to build this template. You put it somewhere in a location that sticks knows about, and they just, boom, plugs it in. And actually, you know what you've done? You've maybe removed one of the main hassles of your job. At least it was for me for a while, right? Because these analysts are awesome, but boy, a lot of them are very, very needy. No offense. No, I hope I'm not offending anybody. So I'm not profiling either. So sorry. So session management module is again on the roadmap, and beyond that, there's I mean, this is built using FastCGI. In my opinion, this is robust enough. There's a lot of other folks who are using FastCGI. It's been kind of stable for a very long time. Then they moved it to a new module, so it's called FCGI-D right now. That's kind of stable for a while. You kind of wonder if there's security holes in it. I haven't heard of any. I don't know. And apparently there are people who are actually still doing active development for it. But would it be nice to take it over altogether and do like mod sticks, right? So in Apache. And then you have control over everything. Now, the main issue there is sort of like multi-threading scenarios and supporting that across different platforms in a way that allows you don't take a performance hit that because of the fact that like the FastCGI guys maybe have looked at this for more time on more platforms. Nginx, I don't know, like Nginx was really hot a few years ago. It probably still is, but nobody's come to me and said, I need this for Nginx when I said that only runs on Apache, but some people may do. Also, packaging as deb for Ubuntu and RPM for CentOS, Red Hat, so on and so forth. By the way, one of the things that the installer is doing, so installer, I've tested on a few flavors of CentOS as well. And one of the main challenges is CentOS out of the box comes with SE Linux, right? So, which is, I mean, like big and scary stuff, right? And I think the last thing that you probably want as an application developer is, figure out how to deal with that. So there's some code there that can change policies for you so that this thing runs. So in theory, like SE Linux, if it discovers that you have binaries in there, like JSON, the ones that I've written, that are invoked by by Apache, will simply stop running Apache. So we've done some work to make sure that you have the policies written. That hasn't been tested enough though, right? So I've maybe seen like 3 real life installations in which this has worked, but I haven't seen any failures that could use me to maybe move this forward. We're actively looking for worthwhile formats to support. I had at a point in time, was looking like binary objects as well. There's you can store for instance, images and database and stuff like that. It would be nice if there's like a straightforward way to access the image rather than sort of like do a query, get the image kind of thing. Now, the key insights here, and I think I'm going to be a little early for this, but that's cool. First of all, separation between packaging and data. So that, to me, that is the main thing that this is bringing to the table. Now, two consequences of that are that the automation of packaging opens immediately the opportunity for us to do sort of like out-of-bound implementations for different formats, right? Which usually is, implement this particular API in XML. No, the API is written, so we just added another format, and you can take advantage of it if there's a need. And also, the performance and maintainability. Performance is one thing, and it's a loaded conversation. But the maintainability of the data model that represents your API is a big challenge. There's versioning, there's a lot of complications in that, in my experience, right? Now, this will not solve everything, but will bring, in my opinion, we'll make it a rational conversation to think about, like the data and the data architecture where it's supposed to be, right? So it's a lot easier to deal with database issues inside database functions than it is in 2 million lines of code with, like 15,000 points of access to the database, right? With generated SQL in them. That's it. Questions? Yeah.
That typically you need from the identity manager a list of groups for the member, and then something like bindings to tell what that user can do.
No, you're bang on with that. And what I mean by identity management here is not identity management for the enterprise, most likely. I mean, if you're building this for the enterprise with like a hierarchy of groups and like a forest of like access permissions and stuff like that, and maybe using something like ping identity or whatever have you, right? So with LDAP, whatever. This is not, we're not building that for sure. But OAuth 2, so that this can work out of the box with Facebook, Twitter, Google Identity, and a bunch of other ones who are supporting it, is actually very, very easy. It's incredibly easy. So just store the API token in the database, do the signature stuff, verify it. Actually, it's almost like easier in Postgres than if you have PG crypto than it is in a lot of other languages. So. Very good point. So I'll answer your question afterwards. So I don't know. I mean, whatever the function, whatever the function and the schema decides to implement, right? So this, at the end of the day, offers whatever is offered by a function. Question? Yep.
Two questions. One is since we're relying on the function to be to exist in the database.
Yep.
Before I actually call it. So obviously you have to write the function, but
yep.
when you're doing development, how do you do it? Like you write a function, how do you test the function? Is there any way, automated way you do it? That's the there's another question.
Good. No, it's a great one. I've used this for automated testing of database. Let me just put it this way. Because to do test automation at the database level is non-trivial. And a lot of the tools that help you with test automation, actually, they're happy to play with things like JSON or XML, right? So if they get the data in JSON or XML, they can do stuff with it much easier than if it is you have to write it at the level of the libpq or whatever it is. So in answer to your question specifically, this can help you with test automation, but you have to write the function, right? What are you going to test otherwise, right? So if and actually I propose to you that it'll be not easier, but you'll have more confidence in after you've tested the function that's written in the database than if you've tested the function that's written in a layer above that, right?
And the second question.
Yep.
I mean, that's really great. Have you thought about giving another hook before you actually serve that to, as in a, you know, so that others can plug into whatever transformation that they want to do?
Yeah.
Have you thought about that?
Yeah, for sure.
It would be great to do this.
For sure, for sure. And I mean, quite frankly, there's, in my opinion, the main asset here is simplicity. And if we find a way to keep it simple and get usage out of it, I think it opens the door to a lot of stuff like what you just mentioned, right? But I don't want to get ahead of myself here, right? So you know, like I don't want to sort of like plan for you know like a component API in the middle there and spec it, and then don't get usage on that, and everybody's using just the vanilla product. Yep.
So I'm not sure if that's the same question you asked, but you know, there's some things that may not want to use the database function. For example, collecting images and I'm resizing those images and that kind of stuff. So have you thought about, you know, like if I have a Django app, for example, and this would be like a great, you know,
Mm-hmm.
I use it and
Yeah, yeah.
you know, have you thought of that?
Yeah, I mean, like to me, the one of the best scenarios here is mashup, right? So you have like a part of it, and by the way, like I mean, chances are that if you do like a web application these days, you use actually not one but maybe half a dozen APIs, right? So I'm just guessing, right? And out of those half a dozen APIs, chances are that some of them need to deal with identity in one way or another, and maybe you need to share it between them, right? Which is one of the big challenges, right? Now, this allows you a way to do that. So this allows you to play with your data in a format that is easy to consume by these mashups. And when I started, I said that this is not for like any API. Right? I mean, if your API makes beer, for instance, right? So you know, like, I cannot simplify that for you. No. Yep.
How does this compare to other alternative database API things like Sandman or Postgres?
So I think there's quite a variety of stuff out there, right? So by the way, and not just in Postgres, right? So JSON was the #1 requested feature in SQL Server this year, 2016. And actually, they have something that's called for XML and for JSON, which in my opinion, having looked around, is the closest thing to what this is. So you know, like where you have like a select or query, and at the end of the day, you just say for JSON, and you get like a JSON record, right? But I don't think I've seen something that is exactly this. So, but if you have and you think that there's something that matches it or is better, for sure, I would like to see it. Yep.
Any concerns with SQL injection?
So yeah, great. I mean, for sure it's a surface attack surface, but that attack surface appears everywhere. Now, this uses parameterized SQL, so that takes care of some of that, right? So basically, if you're familiar with libpq, so in libpq, you actually type parameters, have an ability to type parameters to the actual call. So, yep.
So, one of the things is, you know, SQL to anything, but you are using HTTP URLs in order
Yes.
to look stuff up. Have you considered also implementing basically an SQL API for this?
Yeah, why not?
For stuff like JSON and CSV, where you conceivably deliver a result.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, I mean, here's the deal, right? There's no reason why this cannot be expanded to multiple protocols, right? The reason why I did HTTP is just because, you know, I mean, like, this is where most applications mash up these days, right? So, and quite frankly, if there's a need, which is one of my main reasons for doing this talk, right? To hear out whether there's, you know, like great ideas about where I should take this, right? So, yeah, drop me a line. I'm not sure if you saw my email address is at, was it on the first slide? m@stix.co. M, so it's very, very, very cool. How cool? How much cooler than that can you get? So anything else? If not, I guess that's it. Thank you.